live. Good afternoon, everyone. So glad you can join us for this talk. I'm Mariana Barceló. I'm the General Coordinator of this meeting of European cinema. It's organized by the European Union in Argentina. 14 countries of the European Union are participating with 19 films, most of them touching on the gender perspective issue. This is the last talk of the meeting. We'll be talking about women in animation, shared points of view between Austria and Argentina. The films, you can see them until Monday in our website, cineuvargentina.com. I would like to start by thanking all the institutions that make this meeting possible. I want to thank the European Union delegation in Argentina, the embassies of Germany, Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Spain, Finland, France, Italy, Poland, Portugal, Romania, and Switzerland. In this encounter, in addition to sharing films and conversations, we try to contribute to social and cultural development of our countries. The support we receive from all these institutions is invaluable to achieve our objective. I want to thank in particular the Embassy of Austria. They contacted us with the Tricky Woman Festival with 3 short films of that festival, and they added with that with other films as well. And this is an embassy, a country very active in our European cinema meeting. I want to thank the manager of Tricky Woman. Waltraud is from Austria. She's the director of the Tricky Woman Festival. She is pleased to participate in our talk, of course. In Vienna, it's 11 p.m., so this implies an additional effort on her part to be here. So a warm welcome and thanks. We have Katherine Steinbacher too. She's the director of In Her Boots. You can also see it in our program. She's in the UK, I think, now. And she wanted to participate actively in this conversation too. I have to also thank Itatí, Romero, and Paula Compagnucci, both of them here to lead the conversation. And finally, I want to thank Maka of our team. If it were not for her, the organization would have been impossible. So without further ado, I give the floor to Lisa Butzelecher from the Austrian Embassy, head of the cultural section, for her welcoming remarks. Thank you very much for your kind words, Mariana. Welcome and good evening. I want to thank in particular the Austrian participants together with us today and everyone who make this meeting possible and this conversation in particular. This afternoon you have 3 Austrians in 3 different countries in 3 different time zones. I'm from the Austrian Embassy, I'm in Buenos Aires, but most important, I want to welcome Waltraud Grausgruber, co-founder and director of the Tricky Women Tricky Realities Festival. She's in Austria at 11 p.m. Thanks. And Katherine Steinbacher, she's an Austrian animator and director of In Her Boots. She's in London currently. For us as an embassy, it's a great pleasure to be part of this conversation. Women in animation. shared points of view. We're here to exchange experiences of women in the industry, in animation, in Austria and Argentina. There aren't many women who know the industry more than Waltraud Grausgruber. She studied theater, cinema, media, wrote her thesis on African cinema, and was a visiting researcher in France, Senegal, and Burkina Faso. Since 1992, she's been organizing cinema festivals for women. In 2001, co-founded the festival Tricky Women, Tricky Realities, the first and only festival that is exclusively feminine. So I would like to congratulate her for the 20th anniversary of her festival. It was celebrated March this year. In 2010, she was also awarded with the award for Austrian prominent artists. Since 2014, there has been strong cooperation in between the Tricky Women Festival and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Austria to distribute and take the festival worldwide. For this meeting of European cinema, under the gender theme, we have contributed with three short films. Linzer Lutz of the Japanese animator Mayo Yonesho, and The Outlander of the Bulgarian Annie Antonova, and In Her Boots of the Austrian Katherine Steinbacher, who's joining us today. Katherine graduated from the School of Art in Kingston in 2017 and completed her master's degree in documentary animation at the Royal College of Art in 2019. She currently lives and works in London, but in Salzburg as well. Her films have been shown in many festivals worldwide. With In Her Boots, he was nominated for the BAFTA in the category Short Animation in 2020. Congratulations for that nomination as well. So my recommendation to all of you, if you haven't yet, is that you go and watch these Austrian films. You have time until May 31st. I hope you enjoy them and you enjoy the conversation today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lisa. In YouTube, the audience can write their comments and questions. So if anyone joining us today would like to interact, they can do it from there in the YouTube chat. We can pass the questions on to our speakers. So I give you the women in the room to enjoy the conversation amongst them. Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, from wherever you are joining us. I am Ita Romero. I'm a cultural manager. I specialize in animation, laboratories, festivals, and for me, it is a great pleasure to be part of this panel. When Maca and the team invited me to put together this conversation to articulate two countries that don't seem to have much in common at first sight, but we're very happy to have prepared this conversation, to have this well-known speakers. This is one of the benefits of the pandemic, I would say, that we come together like this. So Paula is also in the industry and she has been researching for several years the cinema theory from a gender perspective. So I think she's the right person to lead the conversation today. We want to organize the discussion around 3 quotes from authors that specialize in the audiovisual theory. So Paula will set the theoretical framework of the quotes we're showing, and then we'll trigger a few questions so that we get answers from a gender perspective, and we can rip apart these quotes and bring ideas forward. So I give the floor to Pau to start with the theoretical framework on the first pillar. Good afternoon. So to start, to talk about filmmaking, audiovisual selections, we have chosen this quote from Annette Kuhn. The translation into Spanish is dated 1991, making the invisible visible. And when analyzing a film, when thinking of a script, when selecting a film, the idea is to think of what are the practices that have been naturalized in our society, what is hidden in it, sexism, patriarchy. And when these are naturalized, let's remove that feature of the hidden, the invisible, the representation of people that are represented in different ways, different ethical backgrounds, people with disabilities, social roles assigned to gender, what women should do, what men should do. Question that. And from your experience, we want to know how, if this quote sounds familiar to you from your job. So in what way has this questioning crossed your filmmaking practices? This is our first triggering comment. So with Paula, we said that from filmmaking, from the management of film, I have been part of art teams, and I come across scripts where women are only portrayed as housewives. All they do is clean, do the dishes, do the laundry, and they are not represented in any other role. A festival with the background as tricky woman. Have you seen changes throughout the years in the way women are portrayed? Have you seen this issue crossing filmmaking practices?
It's my turn now. Yeah. Of course, I think in the last years, especially with the Me Too debate, this topic came more in the focus. But we organized this festival since 20 years already. And so my experience is Tricky Women is a statement. Wherever we go, we're in the middle of the discussion of gender equality, equality of budgets and leaderships, because it's the other way around. Normally, the norm is that men are on stage, and if it's the other way around, so it's people are asking why. So it's not the normal thing that there are only women on stage, that women are in focus, but because the norm is that men are in focus. So we always get the questions: do we still need a festival like this? Everything is already equal, and and the debates are always very emotional. And I think as long as these debates are so emotional, it shows that a festival like Tricky Women is necessary, and as long as women earn less than men, women are not so presented on the screen like they should. In their diversity, in a festival like ours is needed. I think, yeah.
Totalmente. Pensaba por ahí también.
Yes, we totally agree. Kathrin, when I saw your short film, I wondered how the female figure is represented, how going through a mental condition is represented and made visible in films, in the filmmaking. Kathrin, what's your opinion here to answer the question on screen?
Well, I think in general, like, representation is just very important. I mean, and the quote is making the invisible visible. And I mean, just quickly coming back to the fact, I think you quickly talked about how, you know, internalized it is, that sometimes we don't even realize, you know, how women aren't, or how women are represented, or something is so normalized that sometimes we don't question it. And I think, I mean, there's definitely change happening now. Also, like, considering what is happening, especially in the UK now with, you know, the conversation that is going on, you know, violence against women, what happened to Sarah Everard, and so on and so forth. But I mean, as said before, I think representation is really important. And when I need to talk, I mean, when I'm talking and thinking about my own characters in my film, I'm always, you know, naturally drawn to strong female characters, because, you know, I can relate to that, and that's what I see. And I think we tend to tell stories relate about things we can relate to. And in my film, you know, you talk about the human condition, and in my film, dementia. And oftentimes in films, females are represented as victims, and, you know, sometimes weak. And in my film, I really wanted to show a strong character, you know, a character that still has the power to make her own decisions regarding the onset of her dementia disease. And oftentimes, you know, in our society, we try to make decisions, especially for the elderly ones, especially for people who, you know, maybe suffer from dementia, because it, you know, I mean, because we mean good. It comes, you know, it comes with good intentions. But, you know, in my film, I wanted to question it, and I wanted to question whether we can still maintain that autonomy despite the onset of dementia. I think that was something that was really important for me to show. I mean, it's based on a true story. It's based on my own grandmother, and she's a very strong character, very confident and very independent, and it was something I wanted to show. I usually consciously show that based on, and I think, yeah, that is something that is very important to me. Especially, I mean, a couple of years back, I saw I have to go a little bit back in time, because a couple of years ago, I went back home. I'm from Salzburg, and I went to see a play organized by a nursery. And it was something, you know, like a moment that was quite important, because I realized that, yes, things are changing and things are getting better, but, you know, we are far from equal. And it was a play organized by a nursery. My nephew he went to that nursery. I think he must have been 4 years old at the time. And I remember, I can't really remember what the play was about, but I remember the characters so vividly because they had scientists and doctors and astronauts, for instance. And I could not believe my eyes because I saw, girls being in that play, being, a scientist, a doctor, and an astronaut, but they were dressed up as men. And I really could not believe my eyes. And, what did that say? Is it not possible as a woman, as a girl, that you can, become a scientist or a doctor? And I just found it so surreal that they were dressed as men. And, at the beginning I was very furious, but then, I was very sad. I left feeling very sad because nobody questioned it. There was no one who questioned it. Like, the parents were just sitting there, was just so normalized. And I think coming back to that statement, making the invisible visible, it's like, it's so normalized that people don't question it. Yeah. And since I saw their play, I think I'm very consciously thinking about the characters. Yeah, even more. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
Yeah, but I'm happy now that there are a lot of statistics now are made, because statistics make facts. And before, when we said there's an imbalance, people said, no, the world has changed in the last years, that everything is equal now. But the statistics prove that's not the case. We still have not an equal budget in the film production. But I'm happy to announce that now in Austria, there's a changement now. At last month in the Austrian Film Institute, there was a decision that in the future, starting in July this year, to have a gender balance in the funding, because 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we had the film gender report here in Austria, and they were researching all numbers, who gets what, which budget, and how many directors are in the film business compared to men. And there was a big research, and it came out that there is such a disbalance in the support of the film productions. So no one could deny it anymore. And as I just said, 1 month ago, it was decided that till 24, the Austrian Film Institute wants to have an equal percentage, really gender budgeting, but step by step. So they start. So that's one thing already, and it needs more awareness on this, because sometimes when I talk with, sometimes people come for consulting about the film concept, and very often I ask, what would it be if the main character is a woman? And it makes such a difference very often. Sometimes even female filmmakers don't think on having a female main character. I know there are stories that have to be told that need a male character, but very often it's not in mind to tell the story from the female point of view, even from women. And so that's all very often very surprising. So we have also an organization here. They are fighting for more gender quality in the film business. It's called FC Gloria. It's a sister organization, and they send us out a call every 2 years, I think. The call is called "If She Can See It, She Can Be It." It calls out for scripts with female characters that are not corresponding to cliches. And you can get, I think, 3 awards with 5,000 euro. And the results are already that So it makes a change. So I think it needs a lot of instruments like this to create awareness. And I'm happy to see that there's something changing now with these instruments. You know, it needs structures, it needs mentorship, it needs also in the funding, it needs that there are some benefits if you have women in the main positions. Yeah, I think that's important to make change. Without these changing funding structures or special calls, it won't change. That's my experience, because the structures are so to lose power. So no one wants to lose the power. So it needs strict structures to change this. Yeah, that's my opinion. How is it in Argentina?
Sí, por ahí yo quería agregar algo en eso.
Yes, let me build on that. For example, here we have a few regulations. Throughout Latin America, there are some interesting legal frameworks that are hard to implement, though. For example, in this, legally, there's a female quota in juries, in project selection. The legal framework is there, but then there is no enforcement. It's not guaranteed. And then it only becomes a fad. We put these feminine roles because it's in vogue to represent them, but it's still a cliche. It's representing the same things that we have seen, and it's still made invisible. I've been hearing lots of men complaining about the gender quota in festivals because they say that festivals are only selecting films made by women and not quality films. So it's film industry and the female film industry. It should not be separate. Men think that we use that excuse to sell our films, but if resources are not democratized, the funding is not democratized and made equally available to all of us, we'll need the quota.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. And you need the statistics to prove this. That's not equal, that women get less budget. It was the same process here in Austria. Before, no one believed it. And then this film gender report proved it. And it was really, it was worse than we expected.
Bueno, aquí la universidad pública.
Yes, here in Argentina, in public universities, there are now more women who graduate from the filmmaking industry, but they are not well represented in the industry, and they do not receive the funding for production. So you have this crystal glass, the sticky floors, the crystal ceiling. It just goes beyond the film industry. So just to build on the conversation, we prepared here another quote. Cinema refers us to a complex web of historical, economic, and social relations that produce, authorize, and regulate both subject and its representations. Now, this statement reflects that currently there are many men talking about women, talking about trans people, but talk of them from stereotypical roles. So the cinema represents the reality or an illusion, which some cases we reproduce. Or is it really that the cinema is producing realities? After a film that you select, for example, someone might come to you. I made a film of a widow. There was a very short scene where a woman put away the clothes of the dead husband. And after the film, a woman said that in that scene that was putting away old clothes, she cried, she became emotional, she empathized with the character. And it's something that I had heard of a grandmother, right? How the cinema produces those representations and allows us to relate differently with others. Is there any reflection that you can think of from our quote? Let's show the question we had planned to guide our conversation. In your experience, how do we identify with other characters and in the audience? Sometimes it comes in as a shock. So does the selection of main characters relate to the audience's identification processes? Does your own experience influence the character selection?
Of course, I think the audiovisual content and moving in images, it's a very powerful instrument. They influence our view of the world. And female characters in film define our perception of women and men, of all genders in society. And yes, the content of the story and the characters are important for our view of the world. Film can be life-changing. How often do you say, so media and film are so important for our role models. So it's really powerful how we present women on screen, of course. And so we really need other role models on the screen. And also, as you can imagine, their statistic, especially from I'm sure you know, the Annenberg Foundation in the States. And in the top grossing films from in the last years, there's only a small percentage of speaking characters, only 30%. And to be a speaking character, it only needs to say a sentence. And so we are really the minority on the screens, and that can be the case. So it's not only the kind of characters we are presenting, it's also the we don't have. So we are 52% of the world, of the population. So we should have displays on screen also, yeah.
También es re interesante lo que decís. Y yo pienso...
That's so interesting. We're talking here about animation, and animation has a mainstream target audience, early childhood, I guess. And those representations addressing children, I think of my childhood. I'm 30 years old. Disney marked my childhood. in not only for roles, but territorial representations. I don't remember any Latin American Disney character showing our reality. All characters were far from our reality. It was European princesses living in the snow. I live
Yeah.
in Argentine mainland where it's dry, where there's no snow, where there are no castles. Later on, Disney took on other characters with other representations, but with stereotyped roles. But it's beyond that. It's the desires of women getting married, having children, only that. And when we do animation for adults, when you talk about animation, people tell you it's for children. So it's powerful to think of new representations because these are for future generations. It's an important role, the one we play, because we are speaking, we are addressing children. Kathrin?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I remember what you were like asking. So first of all, you were asking how the audience identifies with the characters, right? And I think there was another question, how I select, or if I select my characters based on my own experience, right? Well, okay. So where to start? I think what we naturally try to do in order to understand the world is we're always trying to put people into boxes, right? But oftentimes people just don't fit into these boxes. So and I think it's very important that you show main characters on the screen that don't fit into these boxes. So we need to break away from these stereotypes, and as I said before, we need to represent, and we need to diversify. And I think diversifying is really very important. And as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, I think we have great responsibility to show that, and also great power, because we women are always wanting, we want that power. But if you are a filmmaker and you have that power to show I don't know, marginalized characters, for instance. So coming back to your question, if I select my characters based on my own experience, yes, maybe not always based on my own experience, but oftentimes based on, what influenced me on something, I see in my, I don't know, oftentimes, family or surroundings that I think is, not working, or I don't know, giving people a voice who I think are not really heard in mainstream media. So yes, I think, that is very important, because, it's also quite boring to always, show films told from the same perspective. And, we don't, as you said, with Disney, we don't need another film where we show that the princess is being saved by a prince. I think we have seen that enough by now. So I don't think we need to see more of that. And especially, you mentioned animation for children. I think I mentioned that earlier, that we tell children stories, and these stories oftentimes help them to understand their place in the society and in the world. So if we are showing girls that they have to get married, they have to be in a relationship with a man, I don't know, they have to do this and they have to do that, then of course that's everything they see, and they don't see anything else, and it's more difficult to imagine doing something else and breaking away from it. So I think as a filmmaker, you have great responsibility to break away from that stereotype.
this may be a difference between our countries. Here in Austria, we don't have a real industry in the animation world. It's more the independent experimental world. And maybe it's because we are a really small country compared to Argentina. And at our festival, the main part of our films are produced independently, not all, but we have a wide spectrum of production backgrounds, really films that were made by one woman, and also production that were made with a big budget. We mainly present shorts, but I think also in feature films there are several independent produced films, and they're quite different. And we don't have, so we get a lot of films that present other points of view of the world. And I think that's one quality of animation, because I have to cite Amanda Babur from Australia, because she said in one of her lectures to women that animation is not bound to the physical, to the material world, so you can create everything. And I agree absolutely. In animation opens thousands of possibilities, because you can be God, you can combine puppets with you can set them in the real world and animate them. You can create everything. There are no limits. You have so many techniques. You can use puppets. You can draw. You can whatever and so it opens another visual language. And another, there are so many ways of narration, so you can tell other stories with other means. And there's the big potential that makes me, after 20 years making an animation film festival, that keeps my fire, because every year we get new films in new techniques. And this gives me another view on the world, another insight in problems, in special situations. And there's so much power in this. And for this reason, I think really animation is one of the best mediums to make a change in the world. Because we try to present the films in other contexts. We try to show the films at the employment office, with institutions that fight against violence against women. Once a year, we have a program with several organizations that fight. So we have 16 days against violence against women and girls. Maybe you have the same period in November in Argentina. I don't know. Do you also have 16 days against violence against women and girls in Argentina? So we screen films during these days that inform about this, with options how to behave. And there are a lot of animated films about this topic. And I think in commercial films, this topic does not have this big space as it has in animation. How is this in Argentina?
Es cierto que en los últimos años, debido a...
It is true that in the last few years, because of the media, there was a case that became renowned. So we started talking, working around a campaign known as the Ni Una Menos, no more women. It's a movement like the Me Too to visualize the issue, but these are not mainstream. It's not made by men, but this is only recent. And whenever there is behind the camera or in a script or in a filmmaking, when there's a woman behind it, there's always a new perspective, a new look. And I agree with Kathrin. It's not always women being victimized, but women showing women power to as an enabler, an empowerment tool. This fourth wave that reached us, promoted by the movement Ni Una Menos, local movement, in the professional fields, many organizations were created in the AV sector and in all professional sectors. There are several movements throughout the country in the different provinces. They encourage, for example, in animation, there's a RAMA, it's called an Association of Women in Animation, that are rethinking production modalities. In isolation as a technique, it was very difficult to mentor new figures, but if you were collaborating, if you received a specific training, we could easily build stories and start filmmaking. So we were not working in silos, but working together. It's a collective production, if you know what I mean. It's not a single woman that is resolving the issue, but many of us together and well organized. And again, looking at statistics, we demand for statistics. And if they are not available, as you said, we should make them. These women movement sent forms everywhere. They put together a survey, and in the audiovisual sector, I think out of 7 women who start who graduated from AV school, only 1 entered the sector and made a livelihood of filmmaking. So the movement, this collective movement, recently helped. Production modes also have an influence on the content, as you said. And whenever you get a barrier, you get a disruptive way of representing, a new way of representing. And we are currently reflecting on that, right? From a geographical sublocation, because we are not in the city of Buenos Aires. Remember, we are in Córdoba. This is mainland, far from the capital city, and the resources available here are different to what you would find in the capital city. And when you get local production with trans filmmakers and such, it's really a unique event. But from these productions, we have found new ways of production. So let's move on with the last slide. We may be having a delay in translation, but I hope we are all understanding each other. Yes, we can move forward. We have been discussing this already because we mentioned statistics. Katherine talked about how she produced and created her characters from her personal experience. So this quote we brought, films produced by those who do not comply with the identity rules proposed by the hegemonic model can introduce viewpoints, poetics, and representations which are anew. So the final question we proposed, this is ourselves wondering several questions. Are there really films made by women, lesbian, trans, and non-binary people that may share common characteristics? Do you think this can be called feminist films only because they are not made by men? And do you think this provides a new viewpoint? I think you have already answered these questions, but you might want to make a final comment around these.
Yeah, do you want me to start? Yeah, I think we already talked about this a little bit, but I just wanted to say that I think what is also important in general, but also when you make films, is that we not only show female role models. I think it's equally important to show good, positive male role models. Men who are brave enough to, show vulnerability, men who, I don't know, spend time with their children, not only playing, but, supporting them mentally and, do all the things usually women do, maybe things that aren't so comfortable, like, brushing teeth, or I don't know, the less fun things. But also in generally, showing male characters that are struggling and, being vulnerable. I think that is something that is equally important. And also showing that I feel like in filmmaking, what oftentimes is lacking is that we show that there is enough space for making mistakes as well and learn from these mistakes. And especially when we talk about gender equality, I oftentimes feel that there is not so much safe space to make mistakes, because we live in quite a righteous society at the moment, and we oftentimes judge quite easily and start pointing the fingers at each other. But I think it has to be a lot more inclusive, and I think we have to work with each other. And I think maybe in filmmaking we need to show that more often too, that there is a safe space for making mistakes, and that we learn from each other, and that we show solidarity and support each other. Yeah.
So my experience is also that very often they say there are no female specialists, there are no female composers, all this, and you just have to do some research, and they exist. And also, so it makes a difference. There's statistics also that it makes a difference if there's a female directress. It makes an influence if there's a female scriptwriter, or even not female, if there's a transgender scriptwriter or non-binary scriptwriter. So they will bring in other roles. And there are statistics that there are just no statistics that compare female directors and male directors or female writers or male writers. I haven't seen statistics about non-binary directors or trans directors. So this is an issue I think that will come. But there's a difference when there's a female director or a female writer, how many female main characters are on screen. So a female scriptwriter, normally there's 40. When there's a female writer, there are 40 female characters, and when there's a male writer, 29 female characters. These are statistics from the San Diego State University. So as I said, that now at the moment, there's a lot going on with statistics too, but that strengthens the arguments, I think, to make a change. And it really, to make a change, it needs to engage people that not fit in these classical traditional roles. Yeah, and I think animation is really a medium to make a change, as I already said. I'm convinced of this, and I've seen so many films in all these 20 years, and there is so much energy in it, and so there are not so many stereotypes. It's so lively, so it goes in so many topics that I never see in mainstream films, of course, or in documentaries. And it opens really another world and other spaces, other rooms. And yeah, it makes a difference.
Yeah, I agree with Waltraud, because what I think animation really does is, with animation can really visualize the human condition, like emotions and other things like autism or, depression, subjective experiences. Because you can't, if somebody sits in front of the camera and talks about something they have experienced, maybe I don't know, they are dyslexic, for instance, and I mean I see that, and I'm not, so I can't really understand. I mean, I can maybe imagine what it feels like, but with animation you can really make the invisible visible and bring it to the surface and really visualize that and really animate what it feels like to I don't know, to be autistic or to have dementia, because how can you know? I mean, you can just imagine, but you can't really show it in images, and I think animation can do that.
But what is your opinion?
What do you mean?
I'm asking the Argentinian filmmakers and producers, because it's kind of exchange, and really curious to know about your situation there. If there is a lot of independent animation, because I think that's where's the power, because you're not, you have more freedom in selecting your topics and how look the characters. You're not, yes.
Sí, por lo menos desde mi experiencia.
Yes, I can share my experience. Animation in Argentina is a lively sector, I would say. There are long films for children audiences, but there's plenty of independent animation in shorts. in particular. The last few years, there has been many children's series produced, and these series question the cliche representations of society. They have a very Latin American perspective. They focus on federal features of our country. Our country is very large and with many differences, internal differences. So historically, certain characters have been picked on, historical characters have been portrayed in animation. There are many schools of filmmaking. These are mostly public. They are part of the public university. So there's an additional value to it. Our universities are free, public, run by the state. And so you have very diverse production. So there's plenty of production. We have many festivals. We have 6 festivals. 2 take place in the mainland of the country away from Buenos Aires, in Rosario and Santa Fe. But specifically of animation, we have 6 festivals, and we cover a yearly agenda where you have plenty of things in the field of animation. And that translates into a broad array of perspectives and representations. When we think of representations, we need to focus on those who study audiovisual and animation language, because you get trained on creating representations. At the university where we studied, we have people starting the filmmaking course of studies. There are 500 people starting that course of study. Not all of them graduate, but knowledge is disseminated from there. I coordinate an animation development lab, for example, and from there we disseminate too. And when we do programming, we make a focus on given topics. We do not select projects that may seem racist, misogynist. That's criteria that is in writing. We almost receive no projects on that. So we feel confident that things are changing. And then what you mentioned about the power of animation, Rosana Ubers, a Brazilian filmmaker, has a very interesting short called Aida, to think about women in old age. She says animation will save the world. And I feel happy that me doing animation will save the world. Her statement is so powerful. When she was at Anima Córdoba, our festival, she made everyone in the festival, 300 people, yell at the same time. It gave me the goosebumps, because that helps build what fiction and documentaries cannot do. Animation is a blank page. It's a huge challenge, and we have a big responsibility with this tool in our hands. It's unlimited, so we are able to achieve much more. Paula, do you want to add anything? I'm speechless. I think everything has been said. The potential of showing different points of view. That's what my take-home message. Is there a question from the audience? Yes, someone asked about the experience on the gender quota in animation. I can quickly tell you what the experience in Argentina is. We have the legal framework supporting the gender quota, but it's very difficult to enforce it, to generate new content. That's my personal experience. It's still really valuable to have that legal framework, but it's difficult to achieve that quota. Do you have a gender quota in Austria? What's your experience?
We have it now for the big production feature films and documentaries. There, we don't produce feature animated films. In Austria, there's, as I said, there's no industry for this. We mainly produce here shorts. But for we have this gender budgeting now for the big productions. It will be realized now, yeah.
Bueno, acá hay algo que pudimos discutir en torno al cupo internamente, ¿no? En estas organizaciones.
Internally, about the quota, our organizations have been discussing it. When women producers show up in the industry, it's always the same women producing. So the quota might not allow new filmmakers to come in to produce. That's something that we discussed internally. In fiction, out of 10 people who were awarded a production fund, 3 were women. In the last 5 years, it was always the same 2 women being awarded the funds. That's an important piece of data.
No sé si Kathrin quiere agregar algo del cupo.
Is there any comment, Kathrin, on the quota? Have you had any experience on that?
I mean, I'm based in the UK, so I
Como
can
estoy en el Reino Unido,
speak about my experience in the UK because I studied here, did my bachelor's here and also my master's. So I can probably tell you more about the industry in the UK. And I can briefly say that I don't think there is a quota, but you know, what happened, especially in my year, was that there are like loads of women studying animation. I mean, I think at the RCA we were 35 students and 30 were women, 30 were females. But that doesn't really reflect in the industry. I mean, it's similar to other countries. I can say that a lot of people, a lot of women who study animation end up as producers, but they don't. I mean, often they end up being directors as well, but oftentimes they end up as producers. But I think and I see a lot of change now. So people are a lot more aware. You know, there are a lot more conversations going on, and even clients oftentimes specifically ask for female directors. So if you work, in the commercial industry. And now, as in the UK, usually you have big production companies and they represent directors. And you definitely see more women in directing roles. So that is a positive change. So that is changing. I mean, it's not equal yet, but there is definitely a demand for the female voice, which is very exciting. Yeah, so I'm feeling very positive about it.
Bueno, no sé si alguna quiere agregar algo más preguntas.
Very well, then. I think the conversation has been very interesting. We have touched on very important topics. If anyone would like to make a closing remark, we give you the floor. But in the meantime, we want to thank our audience and all the women in our panel. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation reflecting on the same topic from different points in the world. That reflects on an unmet need that we have to keep working to satisfy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm looking to a lot of submissions from Argentina, and our call will start at the end of June. It will run till October. And I hope, because we don't get so many from Latin America, maybe it's a language problem, only a few, but I would love to get several of your independent or even commercial productions and present it in Vienna or online. Let's see how it will be next year. Yeah, thanks for this invitation, and thanks for the possibility to the embassy to presenting these 3 amazing Austrian animations. And I've heard that they were very successful. So we are very happy about this connections around the globe.
Yes, I think they were very successful. I mean, Mariana has the numbers all lined up. I do thank you a lot, Waltraud, for your cooperation all along the past months, and for being here tonight, as well to Kathrin, also for her amazing short. I really love. I loved the Austrian dialect as well in the short. So yeah, thank you very much for this really nice evening. I learned a lot about animation in Austria and Argentina, and I hope maybe there is a more cooperation in the future that comes out of that.
Thanks so much. Thanks for showing my film and for inviting me to talk to you today.
Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias a todas. La verdad
Very well. Thank you. It's been a great pleasure to listen to all of you. I'm a firm believer in learning from exchanging experiences and cultural exchanges. I think it's one of the most powerful tools we have for learning and developing at hand. I know the pandemic context is difficult, but it has enabled our virtual encounter. So I'm thankful to you for holding this conversation, to continue building bridges between our countries, bridges that will lead us to a better future. Social change will occur naturally as we keep building these bridges. Thank you all to the wonderful women in YouTube, in the panel. Thanks to the audience who followed us on YouTube. The recordings will be available in our channel, and the films and the shorts are available until Monday 31st. Today, this afternoon, we renew the tickets. All the films are available. The website is www.cineue.com. And without further ado, then thank you so much. Thank you for the wonderful evening we've shared together. I know it's the night for you ladies, so in Europe. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Gracias.
Good night to
Bye.
Kathrin and Waltraud.
Ja, schöne Grüße.